If you've heard about the male loneliness epidemic and wondered to yourself, well, why don't we hear about a female loneliness epidemic? After all, most countries have more women than men, and it stands to reason that they would have more single women than men. And this isn't something that we hear about. There may be a few reasons for this. For example, it is possible that women simply don't have all that much to gain from modern relationships, at least compared to what men gain, and therefore they do not suffer as much from a lack of those relationships. It's also possible that women cope with this suffering a lot better, or in more healthy ways, or more privately. It's also possible that we just simply don't care about women's suffering as much as we do men's. I would like to look at the role that capitalism plays in not only how we form relationships, but why we view things in terms of the male loneliness epidemic. But right now, men are struggling, and granted, women are struggling too. Women are actually struggling more economically when you look at the numbers, but I think that when we look at things that way, we miss the fact that for men, their worth is so tied to their ability to provide, because that is what they're taught gives them value. And it's frustrating because feminists are trying to tell men, look, you should be loved for the person you are, regardless of if you can provide. And when you're in a relationship where you are both working and both equals, it is actually a lot more healthy, because you're dealing with a partner not as someone who needs to be with you because of financial reasons. The way things are right now, the way working people are struggling, the way we need 2 incomes and then some to support even a modest family, is because a small group of people, we can call them the 1% or the owning class or the employing class, they control the wealth, the power, the economy, the financial system. They decide what we are paid in wages. We have very little power when it comes to collective bargaining, especially in the United States. Our unions are very weak, therefore we have very little ability to affect how much we are paid. And this has led to a drastic decline in wages and a drastic decline in standard of living. But unfortunately, a lot of men are still stuck in this mindset that that is what's limiting them, that they can't make enough money, and feminism must be the reasons. And if we just went back to how the way things were, things would be fixed. A few generations ago, it was very hard to be a woman on your own and be financially independent, especially if you had kids. So marriage was just something you had to do. It was a financial necessity to have a husband. And I really hope that men understand, for decent men, this is not a good thing. And men are struggling to build relationships not based on this idea of providing for someone, but based on the idea that you are wanted rather than needed, which I feel is a lot healthier and more fulfilling, because it's really kind of crummy to think that someone might be with you just because they need that paycheck. I mean, I don't know how you could ever be sure that someone actually loves you in a situation like that. That's a horrible feeling. And it's a horrible situation to be in, because women have very little autonomy when they're reliant on another person for their survival. I assume that the red pill answer for why we don't hear about the female loneliness epidemic is, well, women can just go out and have sex with whoever they want. So we do have to play these word games where, when we're talking about loneliness, what do we mean exactly? Are we talking about sex? Are we talking about friendships? Are we talking about relationships? And primarily, it's used to talk about romantic relationships, although I have to admit, when you are talking about sex, loneliness sounds a lot more sympathetic than saying an inability to get laid. So it is used as a euphemism for that, especially amongst incel communities who like to talk about loneliness. But I don't want to be too hard on them, because I understand, especially for men who are in the manosphere, who are very dedicated to maintaining strict masculine stereotypes because of their insecurities, because they don't have a strong sense of self. It is very hard for such men to admit that they are lonely, that they are hurting, that they're in pain. This is one reason that so much of their emotional range is anger, because anger and lust are the only emotions that patriarchy doesn't punish men for having. How much a person upholds these standards is their choice, but especially for men who don't have a lot going on in their life, it must be very hard to give up that safety blanket of, at least, I'm not a woman, which is a very horrible thought. But that's why men who are very depressed, who are the so-called neets, who are still living with their parents, who are chronically single, cling to this and are taken in by the alpha male or even sigma male arguments, because it gives them a sense of self, it gives them a sense of identity and of value, and it gives them an explanation for why they're like this that for once is not blaming them. And I do imagine that is very persuasive. It's not true, But it's also not true that they are entirely to blame for their situation, especially their economic situation. Your income is almost entirely determined by your zip code in the United States. There are outliers, but by and large, the zip code you are born into will determine your economic future. But as these men find it more difficult to talk about intimacy, to talk about wanting to be loved and wanting affection, they tend to focus on sex because that's what it's appropriate to talk about. It's okay to be a horny young man. It's kind of pathetic to be a man who's talking about wanting someone to snuggle, which is really sad. But I have to admit, I get the same impression, and it's wrong, because we should be able to talk about how we just want someone to hold us. But, why is that the case? I honestly can't answer that. Why is it the case that it sounds so pathetic to say that you want someone to hold you, but not pathetic to say you want someone to fuck? I'm guessing it's because to not have someone to love you or to hold you is considered more of a personal feeling. Sex doesn't bring the same amount of personal satisfaction and deeper meaning to life as having a relationship with someone where you have deep feelings for them and share life with them. But just because you haven't found that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It also doesn't mean that it's the fault of everyone else, though. If you can't make relationships work, and you've tried, and you're someone who's polite and kind, and you've went to therapy, and you've worked on yourself, and you're able to be humble and think about your flaws and try to address them, and you are able to have friends of a different or the same gender, depending on who you date, you just can't make relationships work, I'm not going to say that's your fault, but if all your exes are crazy, and all women are too picky, and you paint all the people you could potentially date with a broad brush, well, it makes sense that they don't want to date you, because no one wants to be considered that way. It's not easy for women either. One of the more frustrating aspects of this is the primary complaint of people who consider themselves to be incels is that women are constantly putting them in the friend zone. And I'm sorry, but to me, having friends is the opposite of lonely. Women are lonely too, and women are lonely because there may be plenty of men who are willing to have sex with us, but there is a severe lack of men who are willing to be friends with us. And loneliness ultimately is more about companionship and friendship than it is sex. You can currently be having sex and still be lonely, but it's hard to be lonely when you're surrounded by friends, I promise you. And if you are a man that's struggling to date women, I guarantee you that if you work on building good, healthy friendships with women, it will help you a lot. And don't do it just because you want to find someone to date, but do it because you want that companionship. And understand there's no one right way to do things, because all women are looking for different things. And most women are not going to like you, just like you probably aren't actually going to like most women, at least not who they are as a person, even if you are attracted to them. And if you want to be happy, if you want to have lasting, healthy relationships, you really have to look at who they are as a person. I'm sorry, but that is a lot more important, because the way people look changes. And I honestly think that one of the worst aspects of our current situation with relationships and love and sex is that we are so focused on physical attraction. And it's such a small part of what a relationship is. But there is a profound sense of loneliness in constantly hearing men who are angry that you want to be their friend, who are angry that you want to talk to them and spend time with them, and that you appreciate who they are as a person, but you won't let them put their penis in you, so fuck off, that's all that matters to them. Am I wrong that this is a bizarre and self-centered and fatalistic way of doing things? If they haven't had these relationships, they don't even necessarily know what's missing. The way we see policymakers and people in power react to this is to empathize with men, but punish women, to make it harder for us to divorce, to make it harder for us to choose when we have children. And truthfully, none of that actually helps men find healthy, happy relationships. At best, it traps women in unhappy relationships. And it helps abusive men who don't want their partners leaving. But the male loneliness epidemic ultimately boils down to the fact that men stand to benefit so much more from relationships than women. And this is nothing intrinsic to men or women, mind you. This is a consequence of patriarchy, a consequence of a system where we are evolving past a type of relationship where men relied on women for free labor and to be basically full-time personal assistants and babysitters and chefs and laundresses and housekeepers and just about every job you can imagine. Men had an entire support system ready and willing to help them every morning when they wake up. And that's no longer the case. And in addition to all that help as a personal assistant, women also provide, of course, sexual services and affection and social planning and reproductive labor. So all the emotional labor that women put in, these are things that men who are not in a relationship are no longer benefiting from. But in closing, I believe that the reason we have a male loneliness epidemic is primarily because men are not benefiting from the second shift, all the labor and support that women offer. But for people and couples without children, married men do 1 hour less unpaid domestic labor compared to single men, whereas married women do 7 hours more domestic labor per week when compared to single women. The root of the male loneliness epidemic is actually the second shift. Men are no longer benefiting from all this free labor that women had done for them. And of course, women now are expecting an equal partner, someone who's going to share all this work, someone who's going to be equally affectionate and care about their sexual satisfaction equally, and who is going to be equally emotionally supportive. And this is a challenge for many men. Men are socialized to rely on women for this. And it is something that's hard to overcome, especially if it's something you've known your whole life and women are asking you to do all these new things. And I think this is one reason why it's very common now for misogynistic men or men who get into the manosphere or red pill content or other content that's basically apologetics for patriarchy, where they look at men who are good partners, who are happy in their relationships, who do things for women because they enjoy doing things for people they care about and are proud to, and openly show affection to their partners. It's basically men who are happy in their relationships and not ashamed of it. They look down on these men and are embarrassed for these men because they assume the only reason a man could be doing this is because he's being whipped or he's being manipulated, that he must just be pretending to actually care for someone, because sadly it seems like they can't imagine actually appreciating anything about a woman other than her physical beauty or value on the sexual marketplace and their ability to use her body for sexual gratification. They literally view a woman as a commodity to be used, and that's it. Not as a person, not as a human being who has a personality and a sense of humor and goals and opinions. And it's profoundly sociopathic. It's profoundly hateful. And until they get over this mindset, obviously they're not going to have any healthy relationships with women, or probably even with friends, because I imagine that this transactional view towards relationships is something that carries over to friendships as well. It's a pathology that is wreaking havoc on these men's social lives. It's why they're so isolated, because they simply don't know how to value and interact with other people. And of course, this is an effect of neoliberal capitalism, which takes everything and turns it into a commodity. I mean, this is what they're gunning for with AI. AI is going to be your friend now. You're going to have porn for your sexual needs, and you're going to have AI for your relationship and social needs. And if you can't afford it, lie down and rot. And of course, you know these programs are going to be harvesting every single bit of information from you. They'll know everything about you, and they'll use it to market to you. It's just such a dismal, nihilistic, inhuman vision of the future. And it is one that many misogynists are cheering on. They hate women so much that they would rather sell their souls to these corporations. They'd rather be a corporate slave living in a company town than be an equal partner to a woman. Their grievances are real, and their resentment towards women is also very real. But the problem is, women aren't the cause of their grievances.